Okay, so for the attached PDF, there are 2 pages and there are 4 questions that we need to cover. First one is on page 1. Explain what you like about the page layout of the report and how are these items good design elements. Second thing is what are the 3 biggest design changes proposed for a better label on page 2 and whether they or not they are successful. Third thing is based on our study of graphical elements, how do you feel the better label will provide information to consumers? In other words, does the new label meet the needs of the audience? Why or why not? And lastly, what other suggestions I would make for the better label. So let's start off with number 1. Let's start off with talking about page number 1 and what I like about it, what I think is good, what isn't. We'll just talk about the different design elements. I'm just going to sort of look at the page, start from the top, go to the bottom, how I would normally read a flyer, a page in a book, anything really left to right, top to bottom, all that fun stuff. So if you start at the top, the very top says, the title is What the Label Doesn't Tell You, which is vague, sort of, vague and specific, and along with the other elements of the page makes a lot of sense. I really like how they did the title with all the words being in red minus the word doesn't, which is in white, and then is backgrounded by what looks sort of like a bookmark in red. It really emphasizes the word doesn't and tells you they're going to tell you things that other people or other things aren't telling you. Then as you go down, there's a little brief description that sort of is a tease at what they're going to talk about. Says for nearly 20 years the government hasn't changed food labels. Nothing's changed. They want to change things basically. Then below that in very, very small italics they tell you who the two authors are and some information about where they work, who they are, what they do. Then next below that and sort of off to the right, wow, the right side of the page, there's a little, what they call a snapshot of the side panels on cereal boxes or really any food because they all have nutrition facts on them. And it sort of gives you an idea of symbols they think that would be good. They've got the calories per serving, the number of servings per box, and then they have the saturated fat, the added sugars, and the sodium, how much is in them on the right. And then there are little, what look like stoplights almost, a red circle that says high or a yellow circle that says medium that sort of describe to you how much that amount is in your daily diet. So 5 grams of saturated fat is really, really high for your daily diet. And 30 grams of sugar is also very high, whereas only 290 milligrams is medium based on current estimates of what you should be eating daily. Then as you move down, there is a lovely picture of what appears to be a chocolate cake mix, maybe? Or, yeah, I think it's chocolate cake mix. It says, tasty living, high fiber. There's all sorts of descriptors on the box. All natural, supports immunity, made with real coffee. I don't like coffee. Made with whole wheat, high in fiber. And then along the outside of the box, there are yellow descriptors that point to each thing and they say what they believe is currently the problem. The main thing I'm getting from this first page is that the 2 authors of this PDF do not agree with basically anything that the food industry is doing to promote their products. They think that pretty much all of the labels are bogus and they shouldn't be allowed to use them because they're not true. For instance, the box says high in fiber, and they think it shouldn't be labeled that because the fiber that is in the mix is very low grade, singular and isolated fibers that really don't provide any of the nutritional value that actual whole grains and natural fibers that are intact provide for your system. The same goes for the all natural, supports immunity. They all are false claims according to the authors. And that is the general theme that I'm getting from the whole first page, is that they think that all of the labels that are currently being used in the food industry are wrong and shouldn't be allowed to be used because they're all giving the consumer the wrong idea. Okay, so what I like about these elements is that it was really, really easy for me to come to the conclusion that they don't like anything about the current system. As each little blurb, brief description of their problem is, it is lined around the box. Oh, you can't really see it, but like around the box, there's little blurbs around the whole thing. Each one is fairly short and gets the point, really gets the food, or gets the point across about the food box. For instance, with the label all natural, it says any food can contain high fructose corn syrup and is not natural at all. So there is no regulation on the labels that that producers are allowed to put on their boxes. With each of those blurbs they're very nicely spaced out, and there's a red line that directs from each box to the point on the box that they're trying to talk about. It makes it very easy for me to see which points go with what and really understand their point. There's not too much information piled onto the page. It's a very nice balance. And now as we move on to the second page, the second thing we need to cover is the three biggest changes that I noticed between the old label, or what is really our current label, and the changes they would like to make a better label. On page 2, they have both columns, the current and the better, and then a lot of description in the middle in between the two with lots of lines directed at different things. This page seems to be slightly less well organized than the first page, as there are a lot of lines and it could get very confusing with them crossing over different elements. The three things that I think first off that I noticed the most are the calories that are in each serving. They have significantly increased the size of that factor. Normally it's very easy to find anyways, but they've made it even easier to find. I'm not sure it's necessary, honestly. I don't find that it's any easier. It may be easier to read for someone that struggles with fine print potentially, and calories do tend to be one of the most demanded pieces of information, most important to consumers. So that could be good. I don't think it's necessary. I don't have any trouble finding the calories as is. They have increased the size of servings per box as well. That is part of that element, and I do like the increased font size of that because that can be very tiny and is also right above calories. So I guess that could be helpful for me because when my mom sends me on grocery runs, I tend to be buying for the entire house, which means I need to know how many servings per box and how many boxes I'm going to need to buy for my family of 6. And then the next biggest change I notice is that they have changed colors. It seems that they have changed anything with a high content for your daily amount. It looks anything above 20%, as the detailed description says. They've changed the font color to red to signify red being bad, stop, no. That something above 20% of your daily value should be considered and is a very important factor in your health. For example, the total trans fat is 14 grams on this box of cake, and that is 22% of your daily amount or value. And I guess that is too high, and you need to monitor that closely when considering how much food you're going to eat that day. It also did that for sugar. Apparently, 30 grams of sugar is 120% of your daily value. The last and probably the most significant part for me, because this is the most important part when I look, is the ingredients section. They've now changed the section to be much larger. All the words are not capitalized anymore. It does make it a lot easier to find the ingredients as I read. They've also sort of sectioned off the ingredients into 3 different sections: major ingredients, ingredients that are contained in less than 2%, and allergy information. They've always had the allergy information, and it's been in bold as the very last line, but now they've sectioned it off so that allergy information is in its own color, and then it contains, and then every allergen is in all caps, and it's the only ingredients in the whole ingredient list that is in all caps, which makes it even easier to find, not to mention that it's sectioned off. Also, they have always said which ingredients are less than 2% of the product, but it was always in a mass of just line after line after line of all caps that you had to look and find that spot where it said contains less than 2, and then everything after that would follow as less than 2. Now there's the major ingredients, there's a line, then there's contains less than 2%, and all the ingredients in that section, and then a line, and then the allergy information. I find this very important because I like to know what's in my food. Personally, if there's more than, say, I don't know, like 10 ingredients, that means there's a lot of preservatives and stuff that's not exactly good for you, and probably not something you want to get near / put in your body, unless, I mean, nothing against people that will eat tons of bad food. I've definitely done it before, but I try and keep myself healthy. So that's really important to me as a consumer, that it's easy to read the ingredients and know what I'm putting into my body. Therefore, overall, I believe that 2 out of the 3 major changes that I saw were good and are very useful for the consumer. There's probably some things they could do to make it better. Maybe bolding some things better. Like I said, I don't think the calories increasing the size of that font is necessary. It's already very easy to find. I really like that they, when they color coded and wrote high in the daily amount of of specific parts that are more than 20%, because when I'm reading through that, I can see, oh, 22%, that's not too bad, but in the grand scheme of things, that is really high considering I'm probably going to eat a lot more things that day. So putting an emphasis on the fact that those things, those percentages, are something I should look out for is a really good step for them. Also, the ingredients facts, that's the most probably successful part that I think that they've achieved, is they've made it a lot easier for me to read the ingredients, see how much of each ingredient is in there, and really know what I'm putting into my body. So the third point is whether or not I believe that the graphical elements make the better label better, if they provide better information and help the consumer understand the information better, and if it gets all of the points across to the audience. I believe that all of the changes that they did do help the consumer understand the information on a nutrition facts label much better. I already talked about a lot of the things that I think make those changes better when I talked about the changes themselves. I kind of got a little carried away and got ahead of myself, But yes, I believe that the color coding and the adding of the word high in the percentages of your daily amount was a very good change. It was very helpful to the consumer. Color coding is very helpful because it jumps out and it really catches the consumer's eye and makes them look at it and say, hey, that's important. Also, for a lot of society and a lot of the community, the ingredients and the products that people put into their bodies is becoming more and more important to people. So the fact that they changed the ingredients and made it easier for me to read each ingredient and know which parts are important and not see a row of all caps letters that are formed into words and ingredients and a list, they've improved it so much. And I believe that all of the changes minus the change in font size for the calories were all good changes that really do get their points across to their audience. They really do a good job of meeting the needs of a new label. The last thing that I'm supposed to focus on is something else that, in addition to the changes that have already been made, that I think should be changed in order to improve the Better label even further. Initially, I couldn't really think of anything to change because until I'd looked at this PDF and this assignment, I had never even thought that, hey, there might be something wrong with the nutrition facts label on my cereal box. After looking at the label for some time, I think the only particular thing that bothers me, it doesn't really bother me, but they could maybe be arranged better or organized better, is if they could move the note that says 50 milligrams of caffeine per serving. Well, it would make sense to me if they were going to write that there were milligrams, if there was caffeine in the product, that they would put that with the other information such as total fat and cholesterol and sodium, instead of below the explanation that 20%, the percent daily amount is based on a 2,000 calorie diet and that 20% or more in the daily amount is considered high. You would think that they would organize that up at the top and not leave it down at the bottom where it's hard for the consumer to find. For a lot of people, caffeine in a product is very important for them. For me, I don't drink anything with caffeine. Tea is all decaffeinated. Don't do soda with caffeine. I would literally bounce off the walls. I mean, if we could do some like suction cup things, I don't think you can actually bounce off walls. But I think it would be important to move the milligrams of caffeine per serving that are in the product up to where all the other information about different components of the product are, such as the cholesterol and sodium and protein.